Well, shall we begin?
I think we should.
All right, just a little bit about myself. I'm Christian Swain. I am the CEO and president of Pantheon Media. We started off as a podcast company because I started a podcast called Rock and Roll Archaeology about 10 plus years ago. I created a second show called Deeper Digs in Rock, where I interviewed about 200 rock stars and producers and technicians and everybody that had anything to do with music, culture, and technology of the late 20th century. That was my thing. So Ron and I have been friends for several years, many years now, and we live about 3 doors down from each other. And when he was going to do this, he asked me to be the interviewer. So that's my job. So with that, let's talk about Ron Purser. We're going to start with a hot take, Ron. All right. So you've spent years deconstructing the mindfulness industry, but in Mindspace, you kind of go a step further and suggest that the biggest obstacle to true meditation is actually the person sitting on the cushion, the meditator, who is just another middle manager. Do we need to fire him?
Well, maybe not fire, because firing is exactly what the inner manager would do, what a manager would do.
Right,
exactly. So that puts us in a trap right away. And I use inner manager as kind of a metaphor, a fun metaphor. I mean, the old way used to be that, the ego is the problem.
Right.
The ego is the demon
ego
that we need to purge,
Well, there's one place I think it would be really good to purge the ego out of, but we'll do that discussion for later.
We all have a little, we won't go there, but yeah. But the trouble with the ego or the inner manager is there's no trouble with it if it operates in its functional place. In other words, we wouldn't have been able to get here without an inner manager telling us, okay, we should stop at the stop sign, I gotta eat my lunch, right? These are all functional things that are very necessary for our survival, but when the inner manager is sort of promoted to being the CEO of everything that's happening in your life, and then it becomes kind of a sovereign master rather than an emissary, right? Rather than a functional, operational function.
So does that create things like anxiety, social dysfunction from a personality standpoint? Is that you're kind of where you're going with that?
Yeah,
getting in the way of progression.
Getting in the way. We can get to that. That is definitely one of the obstacles of the inner manager, and it operates in our spiritual life. And I think that's what we're going here, because if you try to meditate, often you're trying to meditate. You're putting in effort. You're measuring your progress.
Right.
You're treating it as a project manager would, like evaluating the results. There's a good meditation, sometimes there's a bad meditation, all that sort of inner dialogue.
Do you think that's unique to Western society more so than where the origin of Buddhism comes from? Is it, or is this just common?
It's hard for me to say, but I think the overlay of the Western modern way of living is definitely exacerbating it. Let's put it that way. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So you're a distinguished professor of management at San Francisco State University, right up the street here.
Right. Yeah.
Yet you're also an ordained Zen teacher. How do those two identities, the academic analyst and the spiritual practitioner, maybe clash or collaborate between the two?
Well, the word you use is their identities. You're absolutely right. Their roles. Mm-hmm. And I've never really identified strongly with either one. Hi, Dave. Dave, I think it might be a chair here somewhere.
Yeah. Hey, Dave.
So those are types. Those are roles.
Yeah.
But, even though I'm in management, the field of management, I've never really identified as being a management professor. per se. It was a place that I was able to hide for 28 years. At San Francisco
You'll
State.
admit that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That you're getting close to the end of your academic career, right?
pretty much.
Probably wouldn't want to say that like 10 years ago.
I don't know. But I was left alone, and I could pretty much do what I wanted to do. And I always tried to smuggle in my interest, even in my academic work.
Mhm.
So the stuff that I would write about would be sort of stealth spirituality. And, you know, that was the way that I was able to survive, because one of the, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. We'll bring that in now, see?
Okay,
We're both Chicagoans, and even south side, right?
I worked on the south side for
Yeah.
a long time. Yeah.
Right, we talked about that. But, so I came from a blue-collar family, so I was always anti-management my whole life. I was a union electrician when I was 18 years old. I came from my grandfather was a union steward.
Pro-labor, right?
Yeah, pro-labor all the way. So I was always a misfit in a college of business. Because I moved from a program that was trying to reform organizations. It was called organizational development, was a field at the time
Right.
that kind of faded out as globalization and neoliberalism kind of accelerated after Thatcher and
Reaganism and
Reaganism
yeah.
and all that.
The world that we're still
And even
falling apart in,
Clinton,
yeah.
you know, with
Yeah.
all that. So, but I've been interested in. I noticed that even when I went on meditation retreats and did meditation, that this manager kept coming up internally,
Mhm.
right?
The inner voice.
The inner voice, the controller.
Mhm.
And so I began to see that, you know, it's kind of a mirror image of our psyche, that management exists in the outer world, but it also exists in the inner world. So,
So you're constantly being managed, whether you like it or not.
right. I've been interested in trying to unmanage everything. So,
Right.
So,
Ron, can I ask a question?
Oh, we'll have questions at the end.
and
Okay,
that's why I like music, like improvisation, because
Yeah.
we're letting go of the constant self-surveillance. And if you're constantly looking over your shoulder and wondering if you're playing right, you're not gonna feel like you're playing music.
So, and same with sports. So,
Yeah.
getting to the point of intuition, where the skill just happens. There's no thought process in it, and you're just in the moment itself.
Right, and so that means that it's not a matter of doing nothing or learning nothing, right?
Yeah.
That effortlessness is not just some magical thing that happens. It's a tremendous amount of practice
To get there.
to get there.
Yeah, same with any other skill, right?
Right. But it's let's hold that, because that's going to come up. even
Okay.
more. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So looking back at your career, was there a specific light bulb moment where you realized that the way we were teaching mindfulness was actually reinforcing the very corporate structures that causes the stress?
Well, I think the light bulb kept getting brighter and brighter over
Ah.
a period of years, and I started noticing, like at Google, they had all of the mindfulness teachers coming in to teach Google engineers, neuroscientists, even Buddhist monks coming through there. And there was a YouTube channel by one of the Google engineers. I think Steve's still here. I think Steve took that program, but anyway.
Yeah, I think he did.
So that was the first thing on my radar when I noticed that, and being in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But I also noticed that it started out as stress reduction, which was fine. This whole mindfulness approach came from John Kabat-Zinn, who was a psychologist, I think, I'm not quite sure. But he started a program in Massachusetts at a hospital for people who had chronic pain and anxiety, and so it was a clinical program that was useful, it was therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
But it kept morphing and morphing and morphing, and to the point that even the U.S. military, the U.S. Marines and the Army were teaching mindfulness programs before people went to Iran, and before they were deployed to Iran,
Iraq.
Afghanistan,
Iraq and Afghanistan.
Iraq and Afghanistan, yeah. And so, you know, the whole instrumentalizing of the approach is what really started to irritate me.
I think we've spoken about this before, but
Yeah.
it's basically taking the spirituality out of the practice, and it's almost like slaughtering an animal, just taking the parts that you want that work for capitalism or work for a military structure. Is that what you're suggesting here?
Yeah, and the critique wasn't really aimed at meditation or mindfulness per se. It was aimed at the framing of it
Mhm.
and how it was being utilized and corporatized, psychologized. It was being used, for example, like in corporations, that took off. Corporate mindfulness was big.
Oh yeah.
And it was being used to make employees more productive, but not asking the questions of why are so many employees stressed out in corporations to begin with. Could it have something to do with management? Could it have something to do with the corporate policies? No, those questions were not part of these programs. So that's when I started to critique the whole approach.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Most famously with your book,
Before the book.
Mindfulness. So, but
Yeah, the
yeah,
book.
I think you had an
Right.
article, right,
Yeah.
that you put out
Right. Here's
that gained some attention.
here's the book.
Yeah.
Mindfulness.
Also on sale here at Florida's bookstore.
I'm not sure if he has it, but
So
he can get it. But yeah, there was an article I wrote with another Buddhist teacher called Beyond Mindfulness. It was 1,000 words, and I wrote it more in like a magazine journalistic style,
right,
not
right,
academic at all.
Right.
And it had the most impact of my entire academic career, beyond any journal article I had ever written or any book. And it came out in the Huffington Post, and it created this global
Viral moment, as we say.
debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was in the middle of this. I was sort of the whipping boy. I was taking all the punches. I was in the lion's den for a long time
Yes.
because I
remember.
was calling out a lot of the mainstream proponents of mindfulness.
Yeah, who are making careers,
Careers,
building
yeah.
industries,
Yes,
and things like that,
Yeah.
which maybe shouldn't be looked at from a spiritual practice. And I think you were trying to put more of the spiritualism back into the practice, right?
I don't know if I was trying to put it in, but I was in a critique mode for many years. That was my main emphasis. I was just trying to expose the hype and kind of question, the ethics, the lack thereof of ethics. And so,
Well, it sounds like you've been proven right, because we don't quite hear as much of it today as we did, say, even 10 years ago.
it's
So.
true. Yeah.
All right, so let's start diving into mind space itself. So, you've been a student of Tarthang Tuku since the early 1980s. For the folks here today who may not be familiar with the Nyingma tradition, who is he, and why is his 1977 work, Time, Space, and Knowledge, considered such a radical visionary medium?
Yeah, Tarthang Tuku is a Tibetan Buddhist Lama who was trained traditionally in Tibet. He is now approaching 91 years old, still alive, quite healthy, still publishing like a maniac.
Yeah.
Hasn't stopped. But he fled Tibet like most Tibetan monks. Actually, it was before 1959. He went to Bhutan, and from Bhutan he went to India. He went to Varanasi, and he landed in Berkeley in 1969, and he spoke just a little bit of English, and he had like $5 in his pocket. And he established what was called the Nyingma Institute in the north side of campus of the UC Berkeley campus.
I believe that's one of the 4 schools of Buddhism.
Oh yeah. Well, there's more, but those are the 4 main.
The 4 main, yeah,
The
original,
Nyingma school
yeah.
is called the Elder School or the Old School. It's one of the earliest schools, and you have the Gelugpa, which is the Dalai Lama's tradition. You have the Kage tradition, and I think I'm missing one now. But so anyway, he started this under the Nyingma Institute, but he started Dharma Publishing. Actually, he started that in India, and continued it when he came here. But around 1977, he decided to stop teaching publicly to Western students. There are many reasons. I don't want to, over-interpret it.
Right.
But there were a lot of issues of trying to teach traditional Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism to Westerners. They're just culturally so different in the translation, the language, the cultural differences. And he felt that his time would be better spent preserving the Tibetan Buddhist tradition through printing sacred texts that were saved, that were brought out of Tibet. And he built this publishing company that published these traditional texts that are kind of, they used to be printed on wood blocks. And in fact, they were wood blocks when he took them out. A lot of them were. Well, not, some of them were scrolls and stuff. But he has sent over 9 million free texts to the Tibet. Not to Tibet, to the Tibetan diaspora, all over India and Asia, and all
Right.
the monasteries,
So to keep their culture alive.
culture and art.
Right.
They have their own foundry. They manufacture and build their own statues, and he's shipping those there. Bells.
And that's here in California, right?
Yes, all in Northern California. He's now at Odeon, which is the country center that was built 50 years ago. So, in 1977, he published this book called Time, Space, and Knowledge, A New Vision of Reality, which is a very unusual book because it's not a Buddhist book. There's no Buddhist terminology. It's not anything having to do with Buddhism, but it's obviously influenced by his training.
Yeah.
But at that time, he was struggling, like, what can I present to the Western mind, to the West, that resonates with Western sensibilities? And at the time, he was in a discussion with a lot of physicists at UC Berkeley.
I was going to say physics, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, time and space.
Well, yeah. Time, space, knowledge.
Yeah.
Right?
Knowledge
Yeah.
knowledge is not physics. Knowledge is another dimension of consciousness.
We'll get there.
We'll get there, yeah. And so he published this book. It was a lot of work. It took like 3 or 4 years of back and forth dictation with one of his students who was very bright. And they locked themselves up in a hotel room for months and just had these conversations. And there was a lot of 3,000 pages of dictation that was whittled down to like 300 pages of the book. So, but it's an unusual book, and I came across it in 1979 when I was a freshman, but I put it right back down. I couldn't make any sense of it. I had it on my shelf when I was at Carbondale, Illinois. But when I moved to Sonoma State, I transferred. I opened it up again and I said, Enigma Institute, oh, that's in Berkeley. Maybe I'll check it out. And they happened to be offering a course on TSK, Time, Space, Knowledge, TSK. And so I enrolled in the course, and my life just radically changed since then. And it was through that course I was able to make sense of the book, because we read the book slowly. There were only like 4 or 5 of us in the class.
Oh, that's helpful.
With 2 teachers, and we met twice a night, twice Tuesday and Thursday evenings for 10 months.
Wow.
So and then we did exercises, because the book is structured. You kind of do this intense philosophical inquiry, but then you do the meditative exercises that are connected to the philosophical side of it. So it was very intense. And then we had 3 retreats over time.
So you've maintained a 40-year connection with Tulku. What's your relationship with today, or more importantly, how does he feel about you remixing his book, TKS?
TSK or
I'm
TKS.
just-
TKS works too.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And what was the question? What's my relation to?
How does he feel about you remixing his work?
Okay. I think he feels great. He wrote the afterword to
Yeah.
Mindspace. You can read it at the end. But we had a reunion of all of the students who took courses from the Enigma Institute on Time, Space, Knowledge in the fall of September of 2022 at Dharma College in Berkeley, which is another institute that is part of his organization. We had a reunion of about, Jillian and Steve were there, I remember. The reunion, the
Yes.
TSK reunion.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's
And
really interesting.
there were about 100 people between Zoom and he wrote an essay, Tarthing Tuka wrote an essay for the reunion, and at the end of the essay, he said, I hope people write their own books about TSK.
Oh.
I hope people write their own commentaries.
So you were given permission
so to speak.
at that point, right? Seems like what Tuka was trying to do is wrap his head around physics, cosmology, quantum mechanics, things like that, and how that fits in with his training in Buddhism. Is that a fair statement?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, going back to like around 1975, 76, he was talking to graduate students at UC Berkeley. One of the graduate students, George Wiseman, who started studying time, space, and knowledge. He was a co-founder of this strange group called the Fundamental Physics Group of Berkeley. And they were these renegade kind of UC Berkeley physicists who wanted to revive these conundrums in quantum mechanics that were pushed aside. They were very interested in like the paranormal, parapsychology, and things like this. Fritjof Capra, who wrote the Tao of Physics, tutored Tarthing Tuku in some preliminary ideas around physics. So yeah, he was deeply interested. But this book, Time, Space, Knowledge, is not about physics at all. It's not about physics. It's more about our own experience of these dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
How do we live in space and time? And how do we know, given the understanding we have of space and time?
Well, that leads me right into the trilogy, because you realize you've just written one of 3 books, right?
Yeah.
So, Mind Space focuses specifically on space. So, first of all, why did you decide to lead with space? And secondly, can you give us all a teaser of the upcoming volumes for
Yeah.
time and
Well,
knowledge?
yeah. Well, space is easier to get your. I can't really want to say get your hands around because there's nothing to touch.
In space.
But it has a taste to it. Space. When we think of time, we think of clocks and we think of deadlines and everything like that. But when we think knowledge, we think of information. But space is pretty ordinary. I think there's space between you and me. There's space in ourselves. The room here is holding the conversation, right? Sound waves. Ordinary space. It's our body is in space. Right? We have so we can feel it right now, really, without any kind of special training or anything.
Right.
And we have a constant reminder of space, and it's called the sky. When we look up on a nice sunny day, it's a nice open blue sky, right? That reminds us that even this planet is floating in space. And so space, even on an ordinary physical level, seems pervasive. We know that from a scientific point of view. We know that for a fact. Yet, even though there's more space in our body and in the universe than there is matter, we tend to attend to things, objects, things that appear solid and opaque.
Mm-hmm.
That's our biological survival depends on that to some extent.
We can't eat space.
We can't eat space. We don't drive space. We drive cars. Right. And so there's a biological imperative that is kind of built into us to cognitively fixate on things so that we can do things.
Mm-hmm.
But when that way of knowing is the only way of knowing, space becomes just a nothing. It has no value to us at all. Now, you can think of psychological space. What do people say when they're stressed out? I need space.
Right.
I don't have the bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the headspace. Right. I feel pressured, claustrophobic, hemmed in. Right. These are all metaphors that are communicating the contraction that we feel from an embodied way of knowing. And so space is a dimension of our experience that we have been trained not to pay attention to.
Again, this still sounds a lot like science and physics, and so, and I know TSK isn't exactly Buddhism in the traditional sense, we've established that, but it does feel like visionary physics. So how does the system avoid the religious traps while still offering the profound spiritual shift that you're pushing out there?
Well, I've always thought of the time-space knowledge vision, or the approach, as experiential quantum physics.
Mm.
Like, if we can take in space in a different way, then our whole focal setting, and focal setting is a metaphor that's used quite frequently. Focal setting is used from photography, right? The aperture on a camera. You can, if you zoom in, all you see is the object, and the background is blurred. You zoom out, you see the background, but then you can't see the object very well. Well, our focal setting is sort of fixated on objects. We zoom in, and we pay attention to what our mind is minding, what our mind is knowing, and what our mind knows is objects. And those objects are not just outer objects, those are also inner objects. Our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, we make those into objects as well, mental objects. Mm-hmm. And so we're bombarded in our mind space with knowing things. And the way we know things is we tell stories, and we have narratives about what's going on all the time. So we have an ongoing story going that is narrating our life.
From birth to death.
Birth to death. In fact, birth is part of the beginning of the story, and death is the end of the story. And all through that storyline is a line that we call time. And there appears to be a continuity of a me, or an I, or a self that is permanent through that journey.
Regardless of stage.
Regardless.
Or phase of life.
Yeah, like if I look back at a photo of myself when I was 3 years old, and then I look at another photo, there I was when I was 20, I had long hair, now I don't have as much hair. But there's always a sense of that's still me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a continuity, right? That's still me. But that me will come to the end of the line at some point.
Now, is this the bystander that we're talking about?
Well, it's all kind of tied up in the idea of the bystander. We have
because to me that's one of the most haunting concepts in the book. Let's talk a little bit more about the bystander.
The bystander. Okay, the bystander is a position that we take. We try to assume that we're impermeable to the flow of time. In other words, let's say you're standing on the bank of a river and you're watching the river flow by. That's sort of the bystander. You're separate from the flow.
Mm.
Somehow.
Once you jump in, though.
You jump in, but the flow is then you're in the water. You're still, you might be fighting the current even, right? Mm-hmm. But the bystander is a slippery position, which always seems like there's an invisible source, which we call I, that is dictating our experience, that is observing. Sometimes they call it the observer, sometimes they call it the witness.
Right.
All these fancy words, but it's
the guardian angel, who was the Catholics that we were talking about here?
Yeah, well, yeah. But it's an embodied presupposition. We live it out. We actually feel that this bystander is absolutely real. And that's why we defend our boundary. That's why we defend our positions when we're attacked verbally or emotionally, because we think it's an affront to who I am. The I, the focal setting becomes very, the lens becomes very zoomed in when someone is provoking you, right?
Pinpoint.
When you have anger, it fills the whole
Tunnel
screen.
vision, right.
Tunnel vision. There's nothing but the feeling you have, and there's a strong polarity, or there's a strong tension between you and the other person or the environment. So the bystander is always standing back from experience. It's
like a referee?
It could be any number of things.
Mhm.
It could be a commentator, it could be a critic, it could be...
All those wonderful things.
Right. Another way of thinking about it, maybe I'll go here, is that if you're in a dream, let's say you're having a dream, everything that's happening in the dream seems completely real at the time. The dreamer is like a bystander. But why? Because everything in the dream seems to be happening to the dreamer, just like it is to us now. Everything
Right.
seems to be happening to you here, me here. We all assume that there are these separate selves that are existing separately in space and time. And knowing, is happening through communication from me to you. And my mind is separate from your mind.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of a dualistic way of knowing. But in the dream state, the dreamer is experiencing the dream as if the dream is real. And let's say a tiger starts coming at the dreamer, and you're frightened because you see a tiger, but let's say all of a sudden, you suddenly realize that you're dreaming.
Right.
Hey, wait a minute, this is a dream. This is not actually real. Well, take that a step further. The one who is dreaming and waking up is also not real in the dream. Okay, so there is...
So we are all just living a big dream.
But that doesn't mean that it's not happening and it's not real. Conventionally speaking, like getting back to what I was saying, is that we need the inner manager. We need the functional way of knowing to operate. But is that a delusion? Is that a shared hallucination that is delusional? That we all share it because it's useful to a point. Because now we have this separation going on culturally. Space can splinter, tribe. Now we have tribes. We think, that's your team, my team.
Right.
But environmentally, right? We have a separation from nature. We think we can control it. We are above it. We are the master controllers of the universe. And so the bystander...
Well, a tiny little speck in the universe, but yes, go on.
Right. Well, Elon Musk made. Yeah. So I think that perception works this way. Another thing about perception is that we think that what we see is the way the world is. And that's called naive realism.
You mean individually?
No, how things appear, we think that's how they actually are.
Yeah.
But we know, going back to physics, that no, there is nothing that's solid or stationary. Everything is in flux.
Yep.
But our biological mechanisms are oriented towards telling us that the way things appear is the way they are. But that experience is based on the focal setting, the aperture of attention that we have. And so this idea of focal setting is just a metaphor, but we can change the focal setting through different sorts of practices and exercises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So a little deep dive. In a world of notifications, no bandwidth, as we talked about, most of us feel claustrophobic. We mentioned that. You argue that we don't need more time, we need more space. So what is the difference?
Yeah, I don't think we need more time because we've been told that all these labor-saving devices are going to give us more time. Been told that for a long time, that every technology that we come across...
Yes, they give us more time to do more work.
Give us more leisure and free our attention, and I'm fond. I wish I could go back to the days before email, even. So we get labor-saving devices, but the hours become filled up with, like you said. So, what is actually what is actually scarce? We talk about time scarcity or time famine. I'm swamped. I don't have enough time. I'm busy. But in a way, it's really more spatial in nature. Because it gets back to what I was talking about when I was talking about stress. It's a contraction.
Right.
And so when you feel squeezed and contracted, there's a correlate there. You probably also feel that you don't have enough time as well.
Yeah, usually that's where that definitely affects me. It's how much time do I have to accomplish the goals that I need to accomplish? So it
So
does seem to be time to be the big problem.
You feel like, the world is pressuring you, there's pressure on you, and then your attention kind of gets tighter, and so there's it feels like there's no room, to move, but if you widen the feeling of space, then the texture of time also becomes more fluid, it becomes less linear.
Oh,
There's more room, there's more opportunity for possibilities when space opens up. So,
I believe in the book there are several exercises that help this, right?
right.
So for maybe the high performance professionals here, does discovering mind space mean losing your edge? Or is it like the ultimate flow state that the productivity hackers all have been missing?
No, this book has nothing to do with performance or productivity, really. And you don't lose your edge. You don't lose your capacity. I think what you lose is the tension of the doer, the tension of the self-monitoring, the self-surveillance that we were talking about earlier. That's what you lose. And so that all quiets down, and when that quiets down, then you have more bandwidth, and you have more bandwidth, then your attention is going to become more sensitive and more attuned. So you're not less engaged, actually you're more engaged, because you're not consumed by your worries and your anxieties when that's happening. So high performance professionals, it's not really losing your edge, but at the same time, it's not a productivity hack either.
Right. So those who are trying to just game the system, this is not for them.
It could be, but they may decide after doing this that they might want to drop out of the system.
So what do you hope people take away from this first of 3 books? Because you are doing 2 more, just so you know.
What do I want people to take away? Meditation is not something that requires a lot of effort.
Don't get stuck in that. Don't get stuck in the gamification of it, or hitting metrics and goals.
Yeah,
and
don't
things
treat
like
meditation
that.
as another form of project management.
Yeah.
But my bigger takeaway, I would say my bigger takeaway is to get people interested in the original vision of time, space, and knowledge is my hidden agenda. So that's part of it. But I also think that we make a big deal out of meditation as if it's a technique.
Yes.
And I think where we're going in this book is that it's much more natural. It's more about, like you said earlier, getting out of the way of our own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that the freedom and the ease that we all seek is always available if we can, I don't want to use the word let go, because that sounds like another project of the doer or the inner manager has to do something. A better way of thinking about it is to think about when you were a small child, 3, 4 years old, 5, 6, not too old.
Earliest memories.
Earliest memories where there was a complete feeling of engagement with what was happening without a lot of self-consciousness. So the inner manager, we're not trying to get rid, we're not trying to say you don't have to meditate, there's no practice, there's no effort, but it's letting go of the self-conscious effort. The bystander that has to do it. The bystander is going to become enlightened. The bystander who is going to try to become calm. all of this is a goal-oriented approach to meditation. So I like to think about the child who's just playing and experiencing things fully is not engaging in any type of technique. There's something natural and at ease. What happened to us? We had to learn things, we had to get a job, we had to get a career, we had to raise a family, yes. But that part of our mind, or that nature of our mind, has never left us. That sense of playfulness, that sense of curiosity.
It's still there. You just need to find it.
Don't even need to find it.
It'll just show up
If you get out of the way.
if you get out of the way.
But even that can't.
All right, so before we open it up for questions here, just real quick, if we can, and I want you to take some moment to think about it before you answer. So to wrap us back up to the beginning, if we finally drop the meditator and stop trying to get somewhere with our practice, what is actually left standing in that space?
Actually, I had to think about this one a lot. Nothing dramatic. Nothing. I didn't say nothing. I said nothing dramatic. And it's disappointing to hear that at first, because what is left is just what we're doing right here. The conversation we're having, the room we're in, the drive that you'll have home.
The experience itself.
Yeah, but it could be held differently, qualitatively.
Yeah.
So life goes on as it will. But the way I like to think about it is meditation without the meditator is just a clever way of saying our breath, our way of breathing. We know how to breathe without a supervisor telling us how to breathe. And I've often thought about just the miraculous nature of the human body, how the organs can do their thing without us consciously having to direct them. And the same with thoughts. Thoughts can come and go. But usually we fixate on thoughts, so we obsess about them or we identify really strongly with them, and when that happens, there's the contraction again. And then the space between thoughts is lost. And then again we feel anxiety, we feel we're obsessed about something, we're worried, we're fearful, or we're driven. We could be driven, compulsive. But so when we drop the meditator, there's a responsiveness that can happen that is not dependent on doing, not dependent on making something happen, I guess is the way of putting it. And that, another way of, the book talks about it a lot, is that there's a natural intimacy to our ordinary experience, that we usually feel that things are divided and we have to make great efforts to communicate across distances, make you understand me. It's almost like we're shooting missiles across each other in our communications. But there's a natural intimacy in the very nature of the fact that we're appearing at all in this life and space and time. Like we're sharing space, we're sharing time, and we're using knowledge that we share in order to communicate that we're here.
In this particular
we have a shared experience of some kind, and so this intimacy is natural too. It's the childlike, wise innocence, you could say. See, now there was the innocence of childhood, but now can we return and recover it, and kind of recover the vision of that innocence that is more wise about. Now I know.
So the wise infant? Is that what the wise infant?
No, wise innocence.
Well, but taking the experience of the infant without having the world's experiences.
Oh yeah.
That now having these experiences and coupling those
people
together.
report having this on psychedelics. They say, "Oh my God, I haven't felt so attuned to reality in so long." It
Or
reminds
close
me-
to nature, or
Right,
many
right.
things that occur.
The
in
breakdown
psychedelics,
of the physical world and its fixity is everything becomes fluid, and the boundaries between you and me and the universe are
all wiped away.
right,
Yeah.
right. So,
where it drops in the ocean. Right.
But you see, that's a learned response. That's the focal setting and operation that keeps us in a dualistic mode of knowing and way of being. It's not just knowing, it's a way of being. Because the way of being, if you actually have this embodied, intimate way of knowing that's a wise innocence, then ethics comes up more as responsiveness rather than as something that you're deliberately putting into practice.
Mm-hmm.
How can you harm someone if you know that you're so intimately connected?
Right.
Right? And so there's an appreciation of this. There's a saying in the Time-Space Knowledge book. It says, "One point is all points." Okay, but can we realize that, experientially, and do we feel and live that from an embodied experience? That's the real, the ongoing, practice, you could say.
We'd probably live in a much better world if we did.